The smartest way to deal with toxic people is not by matching their noise, but by mastering your own silence. Toxic people thrive on reaction. They feed on confusion, on guilt, on the trembling question inside you that asks whether you are wrong for wanting peace. They do not arrive loudly at first. They arrive smiling. They arrive helpful. They arrive familiar. And before you know it, you are bending your truth to keep their comfort intact, shrinking your joy so they don't feel threatened, carrying burdens that were never yours to begin with. Toxic people have a remarkable talent for rewriting reality. They can make you doubt what you felt, what you saw, what you clearly remember. They can injure you and then ask why you are bleeding. They can cross your boundaries and accuse you of building walls. And the danger is not only in what they do, but in what you slowly begin to believe about yourself when you stay too long. The smartest response is not confrontation fueled by anger, because anger gives them access. Anger tells them they still matter. Anger keeps the rope tied. The smartest response is clarity. Quiet clarity, the kind that does not beg to be understood, the kind that does not need applause, the kind that simply steps back and says, I see you now and I choose differently. You must understand this: toxic people are not always cruel by accident. Some know exactly what they are doing. Others are wounded so deeply that they bleed on everyone who gets close. But their pain does not obligate your participation. Compassion does not require self-destruction. Love does not demand endurance of disrespect. And loyalty does not mean staying where your spirit is constantly under attack. The smartest way to deal with toxic people is to stop explaining yourself. Explanation is an invitation for debate, and debate is the playground where toxic people feel most alive. They will twist your words, change the subject, bring up old mistakes, and suddenly you are defending things that have nothing to do with the original harm. Peace begins when you realize you do not owe everyone a detailed map of your boundaries. No is a complete sentence. Distance is an answer. Silence is often the loudest truth. Toxic people often accuse you of changing when you finally stop tolerating what once hurt you. They will say you are cold, selfish, ungrateful, dramatic. But growth always looks like betrayal to those who benefited from your silence. When you rise, those who stood on your back will call it abandonment. Let them. Your responsibility is not to remain small so others feel tall. The smartest way is also to observe patterns instead of promises. Toxic people are skilled at apologies that change nothing. They know how to cry without transforming. They know how to say the right words while repeating the same behaviors. Do not be hypnotized by remorse that never becomes responsibility. Watch what they do when they are uncomfortable, when they are told no, when they are not in control. That is where the truth lies. You must learn to trust the discomfort in your body, that tightness in your chest, that heaviness in your stomach, that exhaustion after every interaction. Your body recognizes danger before your mind finds the language for it. Toxic relationships drain you quietly. You don't always notice the damage until you remember how light you used to feel. Pay attention to who requires you to recover after every conversation. The smartest way to deal with toxic people is to stop trying to save them. You cannot heal someone who refuses to look at their wounds. You cannot love someone into accountability. You cannot sacrifice yourself into someone else's growth. That is not love. That is slow erasure. And no one who truly cares for you would ask you to disappear so they can stay the same. Boundaries are not punishments. They are protection. They are the fences that keep your garden alive. Toxic people hate boundaries because boundaries expose behavior. When you set a boundary, you are not being cruel. You are being honest. And honesty will always threaten those who survive on manipulation. Sometimes the smartest way is to walk away without announcing it. You do not have to make a speech. You do not have to win the argument. Closure does not always come from conversation. Sometimes closure comes from choosing yourself repeatedly until the noise fades. Sometimes the most dignified exit is quiet, firm, and final. Toxic people often return when they sense you are healing. They reappear with nostalgia, with half-truths, with memories softened by time. They will remind you of who you used to be, hoping you forget why you had to leave. Remember, this missing someone does not mean they were good for you. Familiar pain is still pain. The smartest way to deal with toxic people is to strengthen your sense of self. When you know who you are, manipulation loses its grip. When you value your peace, chaos becomes unattractive. When you trust your worth, you stop negotiating for basic respect. Self-knowledge is armor. Self-respect is a shield. You must also forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for staying too long, for ignoring the signs, for loving deeply in a world that sometimes exploits softness. Your capacity to love is not a flaw. It is a gift that simply needs better guardianship. Wisdom is not born from perfection. It is born from experience. Do not let bitterness be the souvenir you carry from toxic encounters. Bitterness chains you to the very people you are trying to escape. Release them not because they deserve peace, but because you do. Let your healing be your rebellion. Let your joy be proof that they no longer control the narrative. The smartest way is to choose environments where you are celebrated, not tolerated. Where your voice is welcomed, not managed. Where your growth is encouraged, not envied. Life is too brief to spend it translating your soul to people committed to misunderstanding you. Understand this deeply. Walking away does not make you weak. It makes you wise. Staying silent does not make you powerless. It makes you sovereign. Choosing yourself does not make you unkind. It makes you whole. And one day you will look back and realize that the moment you stopped engaging was the moment you truly began to live. Growth will always offend those who benefit from your silence, because silence was never neutral. It was convenient. When you stayed quiet, when you swallowed your discomfort, when you chose peace at the cost of your voice, it made life easier for them. Your silence became their comfort zone. It allowed them to continue without reflection, without accountability, without change. They learned who you were willing to be by what you were willing to tolerate, and they built their expectations on that version of you. The moment you begin to grow, something shifts. Growth looks like questions where there used to be obedience. It looks like boundaries where there used to be access. It looks like confidence where there used to be self-doubt. And for those who benefited from your silence, this change feels like a threat. Not because you have done something wrong, but because you are no longer playing the role that made their lives simpler. People who rely on your silence are often uncomfortable with your clarity. They preferred you when you were unsure, when you asked for permission, when you explained yourself too much. Your growth removes their advantage. It exposes dynamics that were hidden in plain sight. It reveals how often your needs were ignored and how normalized that neglect had become. And when that truth surfaces, it makes people uneasy. They may not say they are offended by your growth. Instead, they may say you have changed, that you are difficult now, that you are not the same person they used to know. What they really mean is that you are no longer predictable. You are no longer easy to control. You are no longer willing to disappear for the sake of harmony. Growth disrupts patterns, and people who benefited from those patterns will resist disruption. Your silence once served as confirmation that their behavior was acceptable. It allowed them to believe that their words did not wound, that their actions did not matter, that their neglect carried no consequence. Growth removes that illusion. When you speak up, even gently, it forces them to confront themselves. And many people would rather accuse you than face their own reflection. There is a deep discomfort that comes when someone you underestimated begins to see their worth. Your growth challenges the hierarchy that silence created. It changes the balance of power. Suddenly, the person who always adapted is no longer adapting. The one who always forgave is no longer excusing. The one who always waited is no longer waiting. That shift can feel like betrayal to those who never considered how much you were sacrificing. Growth does not require you to become loud or aggressive. Even quiet growth can offend. Even peaceful boundaries can unsettle people. Simply choosing not to engage, not to explain, not to accept what once drained you is enough to make others uncomfortable. When you stop over-giving, those who are over-receiving feel the loss immediately. People who benefited from your silence may try to pull you back into old roles. They may remind you of who you used to be, appealing to nostalgia as a form of control. They may minimize your reasons, dismiss your feelings, or frame your growth as selfishness. This is not because your growth is wrong, but because it no longer serves them. Growth highlights imbalance. It makes visible who is giving and who is taking. And when that imbalance is exposed, those on the receiving end often feel entitled to what they lost. They may believe your silence was generosity rather than survival. They may believe access to you was a right rather than a privilege. Growth corrects that misunderstanding. It takes courage to grow in environments that rewarded your silence. It takes strength to choose evolution when staying quiet once kept the peace. Growth asks you to tolerate being misunderstood, to accept that not everyone will celebrate your healing. Some people only support the version of you that needed them, not the version that stands independently. When you grow, you change the rules without asking for permission. That alone can offend those who relied on your compliance. They may accuse you of thinking you are better, when in truth you simply think you are worthy. They may feel judged by your boundaries, even when no judgment is spoken. Growth reflects possibilities they may not be ready to face in themselves. Silence kept relationships intact at the cost of your authenticity. Growth prioritizes truth over comfort. And while truth can deepen healthy connections, it can strain those built on imbalance. Some relationships survive growth by adjusting, by listening, by evolving together. Others resist it because they were never meant to grow beyond what your silence allowed. Being offended by someone's growth is often a sign of dependence on their limitation. If your voice disrupts them, it is because your silence once protected them. If your confidence unsettles them, it is because your doubt once benefited them. Growth removes the cushions that allowed others to lean without support. You are not responsible for managing the discomfort your growth creates in others. Discomfort is not harm. It is often the first step toward awareness. If someone chooses offense instead of reflection, that choice belongs to them. Growth does not require approval. It requires honesty. When you grow, you may grieve the version of relationships that existed before. You may miss the ease, the familiarity, the illusion of peace. But growth reveals what that peace cost you. It shows you how often your silence was mistaken for consent, how often your patience was taken for permission. Growth teaches you that harmony built on suppression is not harmony at all. It is quiet resentment waiting to surface. By growing, you interrupt that cycle. You choose expression over endurance, alignment over appeasement. And while that choice may offend those who benefited from your silence, it restores something essential within you. The people who truly care about you may need time to adjust, but they will eventually respect the person you are becoming. Those who cannot adjust were never invested in your growth, only in your availability. Growth clarifies this distinction without saying a word. There is no way to grow without changing how others experience you, and there is no way to change without disappointing those who preferred your silence. Growth asks you to stand firm in your evolution, even when it costs familiarity, even when it creates distance, even when it invites criticism. Your growth is not an attack. It is a return to yourself. If that return offends someone, It reveals how far they had drifted into benefiting from your absence, even while you were still there. Protecting your energy is an act of self-love, not selfishness, because energy is the currency of your life. Every thought you think, every emotion you process, every decision you make draws from it. When your energy is constantly drained, it is not just your mood that suffers, it is your clarity, your creativity, your patience, and your sense of self. Yet many people are taught that giving endlessly is a virtue, that exhaustion is proof of kindness, and that setting limits is a moral failure. This belief quietly trains people to abandon themselves in the name of being good, available, and agreeable. From an early age, many learn that saying yes makes them lovable, and saying no makes them difficult. They learn to ignore their fatigue, dismiss their discomfort, and silence their intuition so others can feel supported. Over time, this pattern becomes identity. You are known as the one who is always there, always understanding, always accommodating. But what is rarely acknowledged is the cost. The cost is waking up tired even after rest. The cost is losing enthusiasm for things you once loved. The cost is resentment that has nowhere to go because you are not allowed to feel it. Protecting your energy begins with recognizing that you are not an endless resource. You are human, not a reservoir meant to be tapped without replenishment. When you give beyond your capacity, you are not being generous, you are being depleted. And depletion does not make you more loving. It makes you hollow. It makes your kindness fragile and your patience conditional. True care for yourself and others cannot grow in soil that is constantly stripped of nutrients. Many people confuse selfishness with self-preservation. Selfishness takes without regard. Self-love chooses with awareness. When you protect your energy, you are not trying to control others. You are choosing what you can responsibly give. You are acknowledging your limits instead of pretending they do not exist. This honesty is often uncomfortable for people who benefited from your overextension. They may accuse you of changing, of becoming distant, of caring less. What they are really responding to is the loss of access, not the loss of love. Energy protection often looks quiet from the outside. It looks like declining invitations without elaborate explanations. It looks like not answering messages immediately. It looks like leaving conversations that drain rather than nourish. It looks like choosing rest over performance. None of these actions are aggressive, yet they can feel radical in a world that equates business with worth. There is a deep conditioning that tells people their value is measured by how much they endure. Enduring difficult people, enduring emotional labor, enduring imbalance. But endurance without choice is not strength, it is survival. Protecting your energy is a shift from survival to intention. It is choosing how you live rather than reacting to how others demand you show up. When you do not protect your energy, you teach people how to treat you. Constant availability teaches others that your time is flexible, your needs are optional, and your exhaustion is irrelevant. Protecting your energy interrupts that lesson. It resets expectations without confrontation. It communicates, often without words, that you respect yourself enough to care about your internal state. Many people feel guilt when they begin to protect their energy. The guilt does not come from wrongdoing. It comes from breaking an old agreement you never consciously signed. An agreement to be the reliable one, the fixer, the emotional container. Letting go of that role can feel like betrayal, even when it is necessary. But guilt is not always a signal of harm. Sometimes it is simply the echo of outdated expectations. Protecting your energy also means being honest about what drains you. Not everything that drains you is dramatic or obvious. Sometimes it is subtle, like conversations that revolve around complaint, relationships that require constant reassurance, or environments that demand you shrink to fit. Energy leaks are often normalized because they are familiar. Recognizing them requires attentiveness to how you feel after interactions, not how things look on the surface. When you begin to protect your energy, you may notice resistance from within yourself. A voice that says you are being dramatic, ungrateful, or overly sensitive. This voice is often inherited, shaped by years of being rewarded for self-neglect. Learning to question that voice is part of self-love. Sensitivity is not a flaw, it is information. Fatigue is not laziness, it is feedback. Self-love does not mean isolation. It does not mean withdrawing from everyone or avoiding responsibility. It means discernment. It means knowing the difference between what stretches you and what drains you. Growth can be tiring, but it is energizing in its purpose. Drainage leaves you empty without clarity. Protecting your energy helps you distinguish between the two. There is also a myth that if you truly care, you should always be willing to sacrifice. But sacrifice without consent turns into resentment. Caring deeply does not require constant depletion. In fact, when your energy is protected, your care becomes cleaner. You listen without impatience. You give without keeping score. You show up without abandoning yourself. People who respect you will adjust to your boundaries. They may not understand them immediately, but they will not punish you for having them. People who resist your energy protection are often revealing how dependent they were on your overgiving. That revelation can be painful, but it is also clarifying. Protecting your energy allows you to be present where it truly matters. Instead of being half present everywhere, you become fully present where you choose to be. Your attention sharpens. Your joy becomes less interrupted. Your relationships deepen because they are no longer fueled by obligation. Rest is one of the most misunderstood aspects of energy protection. Rest is often framed as a reward rather than a requirement. But rest is maintenance, not indulgence. Without it, even the strongest intentions collapse. Protecting your energy means allowing yourself to pause without justification, to recover without apology, to exist without constantly producing. Over time, protecting your energy reshapes your life. You become more selective, not out of fear, but out of respect for your inner world. You stop chasing dynamics that require you to perform for acceptance. You stop engaging in cycles that leave you questioning your worth. This selectivity is not arrogance, it is alignment. Self-love is not loud, it does not need to announce itself. Often, it is felt in the calm that replaces chaos, in the clarity that replaces confusion, in the steadiness that replaces constant emotional swings. Protecting your energy creates space for these shifts to occur. When you honor your energy, you send a powerful message to yourself that your well-being matters. That message slowly rewires how you make decisions, how you tolerate behavior, how you measure success. You begin to choose peace without guilt and distance without drama. Protecting your energy is not about becoming less available to others. It is about becoming more available to yourself. And when you are available to yourself, you move through the world with a groundedness that no amount of external validation can replace. Walking away is wisdom when staying costs your peace, because peace is not something you accidentally lose. It is something that is slowly taken when you ignore your own limits. Staying is often praised as strength. Endurance is romanticized. People admire those who tolerate, who hold on, who keep trying long after the relationship, the situation, or the environment has proven harmful. But there is a quiet intelligence in knowing when enough is enough. Wisdom is not loud. It does not argue for itself. It simply recognizes that some doors are meant to be closed, not because you failed, but because you finally understood the price of remaining. Many people stay far longer than they should because leaving feels like loss. There is the loss of familiarity, the loss of hope, the loss of the version of the future they imagined. Walking away forces you to confront the truth instead of the potential. It asks you to see things as they are, not as they could be if someone else changed. Peace begins the moment you stop waiting for people to become who they have consistently shown they are not. Staying often feels easier in the short term. It avoids conflict. It avoids explanation. It avoids the discomfort of change. But the cost is paid slowly, in fragments. You lose sleep before you lose relationships. You lose enthusiasm before you lose direction. You lose yourself before you realize how far you have drifted. Walking away interrupts that slow erosion. It is an act of preservation, not defeat. There is a deep fear associated with walking away, especially from situations that once felt meaningful. People worry about being judged, misunderstood, or labeled as weak, disloyal, or selfish. Society often rewards sacrifice and questions self-protection. But wisdom is not concerned with appearances. Wisdom is concerned with consequences. It understands that staying in an environment that harms you does not make you noble. It makes you smaller. Walking away requires honesty. It requires admitting that something is no longer working, even if it once did. That admission can feel like grief. You grieve the time invested, the effort given, the version of yourself that believed things would be different. But grief is not a sign that leaving was wrong. It is a sign that you cared. Wisdom allows both care and departure to coexist. Peace is often misunderstood as the absence of noise. In reality, peace is the absence of inner conflict. It is not about everything being perfect, but about being aligned with yourself. When you stay in situations that constantly demand self-betrayal, your inner world becomes divided. Part of you knows the truth, and part of you keeps justifying the pain. That division is exhausting. Walking away restores integrity. It brings your actions back into agreement with your values. Some people stay because they believe loyalty means endurance. But loyalty to others should never come at the expense of loyalty to yourself. When you consistently put your well-being last, you teach yourself that your needs are negotiable. Over time, that lesson becomes internalized. Walking away is a way of unlearning it. It is choosing to honor your own experience instead of dismissing it. There is also the illusion of responsibility. People feel responsible for other people's emotions, growth, or healing. They believe leaving will cause harm, disappointment, or collapse. But you are not responsible for managing outcomes that were never within your control. You cannot sacrifice your peace to keep others comfortable indefinitely. Wisdom recognizes where responsibility ends and self-erasure begins. Walking away does not always involve physical distance. Sometimes it is emotional withdrawal. Sometimes it is disengagement from patterns that no longer serve you. Sometimes it is choosing not to respond, not to argue, not to explain. Peace is protected in different ways, and wisdom adapts rather than follows a single script. The hardest part of walking away is often the moment after, the silence, the uncertainty, the space where chaos used to be. At first, that space can feel empty. You may question your decision. You may replay conversations in your mind, wondering if you overreacted, if you could have tried harder, if you misunderstood something. This questioning is part of the transition. It does not mean you were wrong. It means you are adjusting to a life where your nervous system is no longer constantly activated. Staying in harmful situations often normalizes tension. You become used to walking on eggshells, managing moods, anticipating reactions. That constant vigilance becomes your baseline. Walking away removes the stimulus, and your body begins to relax. Only then do you realize how heavy the load was. Peace feels unfamiliar at first because chaos was familiar. Wisdom allows you to sit with that unfamiliar calm until it becomes home. People who benefited from your staying may not understand your leaving. They may frame it as abandonment or overreaction. They may minimize what you experienced or rewrite the narrative to protect their image. Wisdom does not argue with misinterpretation. It understands that being understood by everyone is not the goal. Being at peace with yourself is. Walking away also teaches discernment. It sharpens your awareness of what you will and will not tolerate in the future. You begin to recognize early signs of imbalance. You trust your discomfort sooner. You listen to your intuition without waiting for permission. This learning is not theoretical. It is embodied. It changes how you move through the world. There is a quiet dignity in choosing peace over proving a point. Many people stay to be right, to be validated, to finally be seen. But some environments are not designed for mutual understanding. They are designed for control, extraction, or repetition. Wisdom recognizes when the conversation is no longer about growth but about survival. Walking away does not erase what you learned. It does not invalidate what you shared. It does not mean the time was wasted. Even painful chapters contribute to clarity. They teach you where your boundaries are, what you value, how deeply you can feel. Wisdom integrates these lessons without staying trapped in the classroom. Peace is not passive. It is actively chosen, often in moments of great uncertainty. Walking away is not the absence of courage. It is courage redirected inward. It is choosing long-term stability over short-term comfort. It is choosing alignment over attachment. Some people fear that walking away means closing themselves off to love or connection. In truth, it often does the opposite. When you are no longer depleted, you have more to give. When your peace is intact, your relationships become healthier because they are not fueled by desperation or fear. Walking away clears space for what aligns with you to enter. Wisdom also understands timing. Not every situation requires immediate departure, but every situation requires awareness. Walking away is not impulsive. It is usually the result of many moments of reflection, many attempts at repair, many internal negotiations. By the time you leave, you have already stayed long enough. There is strength in staying when growth is possible, but there is wisdom in leaving when growth requires self-sacrifice. Knowing the difference is a skill developed through experience. Walking away refines that skill. Peace is not something you earn by enduring pain. It is something you claim by honoring your limits. Walking away is one of the clearest expressions of that honor. It says that your life is not an experiment in tolerance. It is an experience meant to be lived with presence and respect. In time, the decision to walk away often reveals itself as the turning point. The moment where you chose clarity over confusion, calm over chaos, self-respect over self-betrayal. The moment where you stopped negotiating with what harmed you and started listening to what healed you. Walking away is wisdom when staying costs your peace, because peace is not a luxury. It is the foundation upon which everything else stands. And once you recognize that, you begin to see that leaving was not the end of something, but the beginning of living in a way that no longer requires you to abandon yourself just to belong, to remain, to be accepted, to be needed, to be seen, to be loved,